time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Maturepreneur podcast. I am your fabulous hostess, Jeanette Anderson, and today I'm here with the awesome and intrepid Lynn Whitbeck. Did I pronounce that right? Whitbeck?
You did
Whitbeck.
indeed.
Okay, good. I thought so. Who is joining us from? Where are you, Lynn?
I am in Lopez Island, Washington State. So all the way out at the Pacific near the Canadian border.
That's right. Did we talk about the fact that I used to live on Lopez Island?
Yeah, I know. We
Yeah,
did.
yeah. I remember now. Okay. A long time ago when I was very little and I told you the story about the bugs and stuff. Yeah. That's because that's what I remember. That and giant crabs, although, because I thought the crab that I saw when I lived there was half my size. I was probably 4, I think, 3 or 4. Anyways, yeah. And I have a story about a spider that saved my life, but that's a long story. So, and all of that was on Lopez Island. So, welcome. I'm glad that you're with us. And where did we first meet, Lynn? Was it through networking? How did we find each other?
We have a lot of commonalities in the past.
Yeah.
But we connected on a networking call.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, this is a fairly small, incestuous little world, this online expertpreneur world where people are, helping other people with their businesses, etc. So it's huge, but also fairly small and incestuous. So we come across each other a lot of different ways. Today, my friends, we are going to be talking about why the client's perspective is your swift sales success secret. So this is a really important topic. Cannot emphasize enough that most of you, and I want you to hear this, most of you need to stop doing whatever you're doing. And I would probably say all of you actually need to stop doing whatever you're doing. Do not do this while you're trying to vacuum or whatever else you're splitting your attention with, or your email, and pay attention, because the number one reason that businesses fail is because they don't make enough sales, period. There's other reasons and there's other things, but that is the bottom line, is they don't make enough revenue to stay afloat. And often expertpreneurs, or people who sell what they know, new entrepreneurs, or even those who've been in business for a long time, really struggle with sales. And so it's such an important topic, which is part of why I have Lynn to talk to you here today, but also I'm going to bring her in as an expert speaker to the Maturepreneur Network, which is our community of those of you who are getting going and keeping going. And we have an expert speaker every month as one of the 5 calls that you get. And I'm having her come and talk because this topic is so important. So we're going to be talking about how to incorporate that client's perspective into your sales strategy to drive results, and how to focus on your clients' thinking about what they want and need and what they lack, and how to attract and connect with new prospects, leveraging their why, which is, of course, a topic, as you may know, close to my heart. So Lynn, you do important work. I'm glad you're here, my friend.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Jeanette.
Awesome. So I'm going to give you the official bio, and then we'll ask Lynn, a bunch of Snoopy personal questions, and then we'll get rocking with this topic, but also finding out about her journey. So Lynn Whitbeck is the queen of sales. Business owners and entrepreneurs hire Lynn to ignite winning sales because most fail to connect, capture, and close their ideal clients. So Lynn helps sell with intent for maximum impact, influence, and income. Bottom line, sales, love it or hate it, you won't survive without it. Lynn is the founder and CEO of Petite to Queen, so number 2, Queen, host of Claim Your Career Crown and the Get More Clients show, streaming on Amazon Fire, Roku, Apple TV. She has been seen in USA Today, Huffington Post, Chicago Tribune, and more. Lynn loves visiting national parks, cooking, and playing Pokemon Go. I did not know that about you. Okay, you can't use that as your thing I would never guess about you now, but I wouldn't have ever guessed that about you. You know what? I think I've probably been to more national parks in the U.S. than most Americans. I've been to every state in the U.S. and I think I'm up to seven or eight national parks that I visited, maybe nine. I
Uh,
lost count. Um, so how many have you seen or been to?
uh, we go to national parks wherever we travel and whatever country we travel in.
Ah,
So, and we're in your neck of the woods. Just last year, we were at Banff, Lake
cool.
Louise, and Jasper. So
Awesome. Beautiful. And Banff National Park is the oldest national park in Canada. And it's a beautiful area there.
it
So
is
that was,
stunning.
yeah. Um, we don't really tend to appreciate how beautiful where we live is until we go traveling and discover other places where they say, "Oh, this is the most beautiful place," and it looks just like home. I, I did that in South Africa. People said, "Oh, you got to go travel the Garden Parkway. It's the most beautiful thing." And the first quarter of it, so about 3 hours of the drive on the Garden Parkway that goes along the south part of South Africa, um, honest to God, you couldn't tell if I was in Lethbridge, a town just a couple hours from here, or in South Africa. It looked exactly the same, right down to the same windmills and the same type of windmills and the same, land, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
I took if it hadn't been pouring, I would have taken a picture and said, "Where am I? Am I home in Alberta, or am I all the way around the world in a whole nother place?"
Yeah.
But this is, touted as one of the most beautiful places, and it's like, oh, looks just like home. I should probably appreciate home more. Okay, so tell me, and by the way, I just think you need a tiara to own that whole Queen of Sales. You got to get you a tiara, girl. Okay, before we go much further with this, where did Petite Two Queen come from? Because it's kind of an interesting, different name. So how did
Yes.
that come about?
So when we were discussing the company name and with my team, and one of the things that I really wanted to represent, all women,
Hmm.
and I don't care if you have purple hair and tats. And I specifically wanted to align the brand for women because I feel it's so important that women be engaged in sales. Whether
Okay.
you work a day in sales or not, it's going to help you in your career and
Yeah.
in your life.
Right.
So when we were doing that, and I just sort of looked across the table and I realized that everyone else was petite from a size 2 to a size 6, and I'm queen sized. And
Yes.
it just went petite to queen.
Ah,
And it was just like in that moment, I checked to see if it was available and I bought
okay.
it.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. That's very interesting. And I never would have guessed that that was the origin of that, but that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about you and your journey. And so and who you are. So we read the official bio, but now tell us something about you that people would never guess, or that maybe even friends don't know, or that would shock and surprise us. You
Well, I
get
don't know
bonus
if it was,
points for shocking us, by the way.
I don't think I would shock and surprise you, but I started selling when I was a Girl Scout, selling cookies.
Okay, yeah.
So I've literally been selling since I was a Girl Scout and
Okay.
I loved it.
Okay. Now that's very valid and very true, and but I don't think that would surprise us. So you got to come up with something a little juicier than that. So what's something else about you that we wouldn't get guessed besides Pokemon Go?
Okay. Well, my favorite place, if I was anywhere right now, I would be in Disneyland. I would be in New Orleans Square. I would be with my daughter, and we would be getting ready to get in the queue for the Haunted Mansion.
I love the Haunted Mansion. It's one of my favorite rides of all time. That, and I got to tell you, my favorite place, if I could live anywhere on the planet, it would be in the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse.
Which is
That,
now Yeah,
yeah, I know. Which
but yeah.
yeah, I would like seriously want my world headquarters to be in a treehouse, probably in Costa Rica, because I have quite a few of them there. But the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse has always been my biggest fantasy of my home. So I'm working on that.
That's a
Okay,
great movie.
so
Yeah.
so tell me a little bit about your journey, because you've had your business for 7 years, but what brought you to this, or from the bigger perspective, what's your why? Why do you do what you do?
Uh, well, I do what I do because, first of all, I love sales, and sales is the lifeblood of any business. And this is how I can help and serve. So I help and serve and help my clients create massive impact because they, in turn, help their clients with their product or service. And it's that ripple. And how I got here is, yeah, I basically, after graduate school, I started working in sales.
Okay.
And in fact, I had to talk the owner into letting me go into sales. And I started on April Fool's Day. And this business was a privately held small business with two partners. I outsold one of the partners that first year. And I
Okay.
started in April 1st. And the
Okay.
next year I outsold the senior partner. And I just never looked back. And it just spoke to my core values and beliefs to be of service and to help people, because that's what I believe, that sales is a gift that we give to our trusted partners and how we serve them. And it's not rocket science what I was doing, but if I took something off their plate, my client never had to think about it again, then I was giving them a gift.
Hmm. Okay, awesome. Okay, so you mentioned that sales helps you to support people in being successful in their business. So that's what you do. But why do you care? Why do you care about that? Why do you care about, and you've been doing it a long time, but that's the what of it. So why do you care if businesses are successful? Why do you care if people generate money or serve that way?
Well, it's because it's how they then in turn are helping and serving others in the greater community. And when your business thrives, you are able to hire more people. You're able to help your community that way, give great jobs. You're
Mhm.
able to help your clients with your product or services. And it's the engine that keeps everything running.
Mm.
And when I'm helping people who genuinely desire to be of service and to make a difference, it means in a small part I'm contributing to them making that difference.
All right. So it's that ripple effect that you love having, of making a difference and helping them make the difference they're here to make.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about, so you went right into sales, and have you been in sales your whole life? Did you do anything else? What happened?
No, I stayed in sales. I mean, I just stayed in sales. I ended up, the company was bought out type of thing. I went up and it ended up being into a big company. I rose up to become a vice president of sales. I was reporting directly to the president, and he essentially was having me fly out and work with other sales teams. I was literally flying all over the world to close multi-million dollar deals.
Hmm.
And as that company was transitioning, I also had a life change that my late husband, was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Mm.
And so uh, after the 2 week pity party,
Mm.
um,
Only two?
I,
Wow.
well, it just that was the hand we were dealt.
Yeah.
So I really looked at, I would have a life after my husband passed, and what did I want that to look like? And so I used that time to make the transition, and I
Hmm.
started doing independent consulting, and I started the company.
Okay.
And I started
Well,
the
that's
company right around the time that he passed.
wow. Okay. So you sound very pragmatic. You sound like kind of, because that's a devastating loss to go through and deal with.
Yeah.
Not only the loss, but the process prior to the loss is very, very hard to watch someone you love slip away, um, and struggle and be in pain and so forth. How long ago was that?
Well, 7 years ago, because I started the business after my husband Bruce passed.
Okay.
And it's the thing I'm most proud of, because we worked through that journey and created lots of precious memories.
Oh,
So
okay, awesome. And so tell me what the biggest difference was for those who are listening, who are coming out of corporate and are in roles, and you basically took your capability and your expertise and created a consulting, training, coaching kind of business out of it. What's the biggest difference between what you used to do and what you do now?
oh, there's a huge difference. I
Okay.
mean, first of all, there's all kinds of things I didn't need to know, right? I didn't need to know about marketing that much. I mean, I closed big enterprise business deals. I had a team who took care of all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, um, and when you start your own business, you think you need to do all the things. Like I have to be on every social media platform. I have to be doing all this and I have to be all doing all that. And it's just total bull honky. You don't. Okay. And I think the first year also it was like we have to create all this content.
Hmm.
And I am here to tell you that is not necessary. And
Hmm.
in fact, it's a gigundous waste of your time and energy.
Yes.
Pick your lanes. You don't need to be on every social platform. Which ones speak to you and make sense to you?
Right.
You know,
Where are your
and
clients?
it,
Hey.
yes, ideally, where are your ideal clients going to hang out?
Hmm.
But your ideal clients would hang out on any of the platforms. Some make more sense than others, but it's also what are you comfortable with?
Hmm.
If you love Facebook and you love DMing people, then focus on Facebook.
Yeah.
If you're an Instagrammer, if you're a TikToker, whatever it happens to be,
Yeah.
um, it has to fit you as well. Not only do you want to connect with people where they're at, where they're going to hang out in bunches, but also what makes the most sense to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you, someone who likes to use video? Do you prefer to write? Do you like to connect one to one? Do you like to speak to groups? It really does have to suit your personality and style of marketing. And if you get involved with anyone who tells you you have to do it this way or you have to be on all the platforms, because there are lots of programs and coaches that'll sell you those solutions. And that's not necessary, nor is it appropriate for everybody at every stage and for every type. So
I,
important to
yeah.
find out what works for you. So which is great advice, and I appreciate the reminder, Lynn. So what do you think in terms of your kind of wake up call when you started your business? What was the biggest shock for you?
Uh, well, there were new skills I had to learn.
Yep.
So I had never done video, right?
Hmm.
And that was I'd never been on a podcast. There were skills and I will tell you, the first podcast I was on as a guest, it was absolutely cringeworthy. I mean, I was so stiff the first 15 minutes, then I finally warmed up and it was over. Well, the
Yes.
second one was better, third
Yeah.
one was better, and by the fifth one, I started getting into a groove.
Yes.
And so the key thing is, you know, you're going to stumble. I don't know anybody who went from a tricycle to riding a bike and just zoomed down the street.
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to skin your elbows, your knees, and your chin in my case. That's
Yeah.
okay. Get back up and do it again
Yes.
because you learn by doing. Absolutely get as much advice and other ways that you learn. But
Hmm.
the key is you learn by doing.
Right.
And so that was a big transition for me to be on video, to be in front of video, to be on podcasts. Now, I had spoke and done speaking from the stage,
Hmm.
but it was not necessarily selling myself. Normally, it was for an enterprise level client that corporate had brought us in. And so I was presenting to their different silos or divisions. It was quite different. And sometimes that would be on a big stage
Yeah.
with hundreds of people
Yeah.
at their national event, etc. But it was a different type of thing. And so that's a whole new thing. And once again, some people are incredibly uncomfortable in speaking in front of a group.
Hmm.
And I want to remind you, you can start by just speaking in a networking group with
Yes.
10 people.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just you get used to things and you start getting better at it and you feel more confident and assured. I
Hmm.
don't expect anyone to jump out and suddenly get on a stage with 10,000 people and knock it out of the park. It's highly unlikely. All
Exactly.
of those people have taken years of training to get to that point.
Exactly. It's a great reminder to be human and recognize that there's conscious incompetence when you make these transitions. What's the biggest difference for you between the employee mindset that you used to have and the entrepreneurial mindset?
Well, I was in sales, so I always had an entrepreneurial mindset.
Okay.
And in my given role, I was given a lot of leeway. Um, and I hustled my own business. I created the entire business space that led me to where I was. So there wasn't a lot of difference.
But
Um,
did you find like the difference? One of the big differences is if you're making, because I was in sales in corporate as well for a while, and sold the biggest sale in the company's history, open text. Um, uh, but the salaries of the people in the company didn't depend on me. Like they kind of did, but they didn't. You know what I mean? Like I didn't feel like that was my responsibility. I had quotas, I had pressure, I had, various different things that I um, needed to accomplish. But if I didn't, my mortgage wasn't on the line,
yeah,
right? Versus when you are your own company, and if you don't make sales, you don't make your car payment, or you don't
yeah.
make your. And so, was that shift difficult for you at all, or was it that you were so comfortable with sales it wasn't a big deal?
So I earned 100% commission. Um,
Okay.
and I mean, I earned a lot of money like you did.
Mhm.
And so I guess, it was my livelihood has been dominated by my sales for so long. It just, and there's techniques and things that you can use that help you. Um, I mean, just using a whiteboard and knowing how many sales you have to close a month, it's just that simple. And you have the circles up there, like I have to close 18 sales this month, and then you fill them in with the names when you get the appointment, and then down below, you have so many calls you're going to close, whatever your ratio is. If you don't have at least a 33% closing ratio, then something's wrong. You're
Okay.
either not talking to the right people, or there's something wrong with how you're talking to those people.
Okay.
So you really want to have at least that 33% closing ratio. But, so if you need to close, let's change it. You want to close 5 sales a month,
Hmm.
and that means you have to talk to 15 people.
Yeah.
So as you get those 15 appointments, you fill in their names. And
Hmm.
then when you make a sale with that person, they go down below and you have your 5 slots.
Yeah.
It's like a super easy visual. And like, okay, I've made my sales at the 10th of the month. I'm golden.
Yes. I like that system and the visuals of the prospects up here and the closes down there. A couple of things that you mentioned that I want to come back to about not right people, not right message or offer, perhaps. For that, one of the biggest shifts that you mentioned was it's one thing when we're selling someone or something else versus when we're selling ourselves. And so when you were selling before, you were selling the company or the products or the whatever that you represented. And yes, we're always selling ourselves, but there's a difference between selling ourselves in terms of being personable and having, the no like trust factor, and actually selling ourselves, our expertise, our services, our products, etc. How was that transition for you?
So once again, as a differentiator and a competitive edge, I was always selling my expertise and how I was going to manage their business.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't as big as transition for me in that sense. I mean, I'm really good at what I do and I know it,
Yeah.
And so the biggest transition was really taking those sales secrets and translating them into processes and blueprints for very small businesses and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
That's a transition because they don't have the budget, they don't have the bandwidth, um,
You don't
and
have the lead time.
yeah, all the different
Yeah.
things. They're often, in some cases, I mean, whether the company has 10 people or it's one person. Um, it's really about getting hyper strategic
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I want to come back to that too. I got to write all these things down so I can come back to them. Okay. So I get that for you, it wasn't as big of a transition. And by the way, you mentioned, like you made lots of money. I should have made lots of money. In the situation I was in, they had a history of laying off people that they owed a lot of money to, and they owed me
Oh,
$120,000 of commission. And rather than pay me, they laid me off, and it would have required 2 years of litigation over cross country. So I chose not to, which was devastating to me financially and energetically and in every way, put me in a 2 year depression. It's a big, long story. However, I did learn a tremendous amount, and it is still a thing that I did that I'm very proud of, because it was something that no one before or since has been able to accomplish in that company. Um, so very short-sighted on their part, but it was not lucrative, and not all sales end up being lucrative, because you may end up in situations like that. So really being aware of, if you're selling for someone else, what the situation is, what their history is, are they trustworthy, etc. Super important. But coming back to your own company, one of the things that I know from 40 years of coaching people and helping entrepreneurs with business startup and turnaround is, predominantly most entrepreneurs come in from the perspective of the technician. They know how to do a thing. They're the cabinet maker who starts the business, or the sales professional who teach sales, or the consultant who teaches whatever they teach. And or the massage therapist who does massage. They are not business people. So like you said, you had to learn how to be a business person, which is different. And typically, in my experience, the thing they suck most at is marketing and sales, self-promotion. They really don't do well at. So they don't know about marketing and sales, but they, underneath that, the limiting belief and the issue is self-promotion, putting themselves forward and saying, I rock at what I do, I add tremendous value, you should buy me,
yeah.
or what I have to offer. And so I get, because you've got so much experience, that wasn't as big of a challenge for you. But in your clients you've worked with, what do you see in terms, and especially for women, I think it's more of an issue for a bunch of different reasons. What are some of the biggest blocks you see to being effective at sales for entrepreneurs that you work with, or businesses?
Well, some come in with that mindset that they don't like sales, that sales is sleazy and slimy, it's manipulative. They don't feel comfortable asking for the sale. And so there's this whole piece, and we've all been exposed to those types of salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Every industry has the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so, but with sales, and you're right, for women, we tend to be socialized to be quiet, to be polite, and sit in the back seat.
Yeah.
So sales requires you to take charge,
Yeah.
because you're guiding the conversation. This does not mean you're monopolizing it. In fact, good salespeople listen 80% of the time. And
Mm-hmm.
we keep asking questions. Tell me more, help me understand. That's interesting. I'm curious about that. And letting them fill in the blanks. The more that you pull out, the more people open up like an onion and share what's really happening,
Yes.
and you can then identify, this is where I can help them. This is a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're in sales, it's the other thing is, you should not expect to close everyone. First of all, there are people who are not a good fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
Not only do you need to walk away, you exit with grace, but it's just not a good fit. Now, they could be that, for me, people who are one call closers, they expect to close the sale after one contact. They are
Mm-hmm.
not a good fit. I'm a relationship sales. I'm
Mm-hmm.
about building a human relationship that is going to last long after they've been a client. And I've served them. I have a lot of repeat business clients that come back. Most of my business comes from referrals and introductions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about, for me, that's one of the first things. Are they focused on building a relationship?
Okay.
And so when you're looking at sales and what you're talking about, the first thing is your mindset. And when you come at it where you know that you make a difference, that you create impact, that you truly help and serve your clients,
Mm-hmm.
and you take that, I call it worthy intent. you genuinely desire to help and serve and to create impact. Now let's flip it upside down. You have like a moral obligation to help and serve people who need your help. And in exchange, they're going to pay you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like why when I do my, my introduction, it's like they hire me. I'm not a volunteer. People hire me in
Yes.
this exchange of services. So that's a big part of the mindset, is flipping it around so that you know that your worth and what that worth is that you deliver. Now sales is a completely different game. Yeah, if you want to call it a game.
Yeah.
It's a service, it's a gift that you're
It's
giving them.
absolutely about being in service, because you can't help people until you sell. You
Yeah.
can't serve until you sell. And I mean, unless you're a volunteer, and if you're a volunteer, you're not an entrepreneur. And the two do not go together. And if they do, then your business is not going to do well. So let's come back to, there's again about 4 or 5 things in there. So I love that you mentioned it's a moral obligation. It's a moral obligation to help people when you can help them. And to withhold that, I call it withholding love. Basically what you're doing is you're saying, yeah, I could help you, but I'm not going to tell you about it because I don't want to be pushy. And it's just really, I call it the ego of low self-esteem. I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to impose. I don't want to bother them. I don't want them to think badly of me. It's all I.
Yeah.
And that's all ego. So my three-word sales solution to sales resistance is get over yourself. Not
Yeah.
about you, it's about them. And so you mentioned listen 80% of the time, ask a lot of questions, seek to understand the need, very important. And excellent salespeople do that. You also mentioned, people have fears and concerns about slimy salespeople. One of the things that I think is really interesting is how human beings, we take, something and blow it up and universalize it. In my experience in life, I can count on one hand the number of times I have had to deal with what I would call a slimy salesperson. Someone who's out of integrity, who's manipulative, pushy, et cetera, et cetera. And yet I cannot count on all of my fingers and toes 20 times over the thousands of times I have been sold something that was valuable or supportive, like per year. Every time I go to the grocery store, I get sold something, or when I go and buy a dress I like, I'm being sold something. And I like it. I want it. I need it. It's a value. It adds value to my life. How do you get people to shift that thinking? Because that's one of the biggest resistances. So, what do you do that helps them shift that thinking? Do you just hammer that message home time and time again? What works?
Well, one of the things is that when you work, if someone's really struggling with that, is really working through their why. Why are they doing what they're doing? How do they help people? And then keep going through that. And there's a long, form that I use, a template to. This also helps people so that they can clearly understand what it is they do, how they do it, why it's unique,
Mm-hmm.
so that then they can create and translate that into their ideal client avatar, and then the messaging that they're going to use and how
Mm-hmm.
they stand out. But it's it is a mindset shift of recognizing, this amazing thing that you do, um, and that nobody else does the same way.
Right.
And that's these are the people that are going to be attracted to that, because this is what they're looking for.
Yeah. And so those of you who are listening, you couldn't see Lynn's face when she said the amazing thing that you do, and her eyes twinkled and she smiled, even though she was talking generally about something. But if you are talking about what you do and your eyes don't twinkle and you don't light up and you don't smile, chances are good you're kind of in the wrong business, or you aren't real clear on the value that whatever it is you're selling provides. And so maybe you need a different product, service, or business, because it should light you up. It should make you happy to share it, because you're excited about it, because you think it's beneficial. That's why you're doing it. Let's go back to that comment about hyper strategic. Let's talk a little bit more about what you mean by that. how do people get hyper strategic about their sales focus?
Well, you really, if you don't understand who your ideal client persona is,
Mm-hmm.
nothing that you do is ever going to actually be consistent or repeatable or scalable.
Right.
You have to really understand your ideal client. So if you create an avatar, if you have a persona, they can be considered different things, but they can be the same. I generally work with a general avatar, and then personas are specific. So let's say you do something like a massage therapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you actually go on site into businesses to deliver this. Now, you could sell into risk management because what you're doing is eliminating risk for worker comp claims. You could sell into HR as a benefit. You could sell into environmental health and safety, which because that's what that whole arena is about. You're creating a safer environment. Heck, you could sell into production or operations because you're making the workers more productive, right? Less absenteeism,
Yeah.
more they're more present in their work, they're happier, their morale goes up. Anyway, so when in that case, you're going to have unique personas for risk management, for HR, for EHS,
Mm-hmm.
because they have slightly different things that they're looking for.
Yep. And then
You have a classic avatar that's more general, and then you have each of those unique personas. Now, many people only need to have a single persona, and that's fine. But let's say you do energy healing work. You may work with people who have chronic illness. You could have people who've been in an accident. You could have people in some other category. So, but you're going to speak to them differently.
yes.
So that's why creating those personas. And when you go into it, I'm not talking about 4 paragraphs. I'm talking about pages of psychographics.
Mm-hmm.
What are the conversations they have with themselves at 3 a.m?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that keep them up at night where they can't fall asleep? What are the conversations they're having with family or friends? What are hurtful things that are being said to them? Like, why are you even doing this? You're wasting your money,
Right.
whatever it happens to be.
Right.
And what does their life look like? What are they dealing with?
Yes.
Then what's life after they work with you? What's the transformation? And so you really dive into those fears and the things that are going on, the pain points, what their average day looks like, and now what does it look like afterwards? And when you do that, now you've created all the basis of the content that you need to
Mm-hmm.
start your outreach, to do your the messaging that you use, how you talk, the questions that you ask when you have a discovery call. Everything that you need comes out of this. Blog articles that you need to create or a lead magnet. So it's, and the other thing you have to recognize is that the market shifts
Mm-hmm.
and your clients' thinking shifts from when you first meet them to when they become a client to when they become a raving fan.
Right.
So that's the other thing, is you have to recognize that your client also that evolves from being a prospect to a client to becoming a raving fan and referral resource for you.
Right.
So those are all things that when you look at that, now you can become that strategic and you understand who your ideal client is.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can build the things that you do need. Where do they hang out? If they're not on Instagram, don't go on Instagram. Okay.
Yeah.
If they're, and it doesn't mean that some of them aren't there, but where are they most likely to be?
Mm-hmm.
If they're most likely to be attending conferences, well, then you need to figure out how to get on panels or get on the stage of those conferences.
Mm-hmm.
If now sometimes that's a winning solution. It requires a bigger investment, but there's a way that you can do that. Mm-hmm. Some of them are going to appreciate you're belonging to a group and providing a free masterclass as a lead magnet to bring them in to have a discovery call. There's so many different avenues that you can go. And it's got to be where it makes sense for your clients to hang out and it makes sense for you.
Right. That makes lots of sense. And coming with that internal grounding, being in service, being very clear on where to show up, and also being very clear on what you have to offer and what's in it for them. What are the benefits for that other person versus the features? Because, of course, we know that most people try and sell on features versus benefits, the what's in it for them. We'll come back to that if we have time, but I really want to go back to this notion of relationship selling, because I had a client, Alice Wheaton, who's written several books on selling and so forth, who would go into a, sputtering kind of protestation around that. She would say, we don't have a relationship. They aren't going to call me to go to their birthday party or go to a movie on Friday. We don't have a relationship. That's not a real thing. You're providing value. That's all that matters. Provide value. So what do you mean by relationship selling?
Well, I would say no way, no how. People, your clients are human beings,
Mm-hmm.
and we buy on our emotions first and we rationalize it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, with my clients over time, I would get invited to their kids' weddings, to parties, to let's go and just have dinner and hang out. So I would completely disagree. And and it doesn't mean that I'm right and she's wrong. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
My vibe, my tribe, they are attracted to that heart-centered, that we're actually building a relationship. To
Mm-hmm.
this day, I could call anyone I've ever worked with and they'd be happy to hear from me,
Yes.
for my corporate career. So um, the key here is that I truly believe that people buy on their emotions, and the emotions are dictated, and to a certain part, by their motivations, and then they rationalize it later.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is to make an emotional connection, to build a relationship. And my clients, they are relationships. I care about them as people, and I want them to be happy. I want them to be successful. And yes, maybe I won't hang out at their kids' birthday parties or
Yeah.
go to their, whatever events. That's okay, because we still spend time, valuable time together. I'm like their work partner, right? I'm their business partner. And that means something to me.
Okay. So I hear you. And here's one of the things that I'm really curious about, because one of the things that I've seen over and over and over and over again, especially with women, is that because we tend to have a lot of approval needs. And when we create a relationship, then we want them to like us. And so then they won't ask for the sale, because now they're friends and you don't ask your friends for money. And they get kind of twisty and hinky when they go down the quote unquote relationship path. How do you differentiate that in your mind? Because that's where I see a lot of women unwilling and unable to, they spend a lot of time, more than they need to, developing the relationship. Let me give, let me reach out, let me talk to you socially, let me just da da da. And they don't actually get to giving value and receiving value. So how do you help them understand the lines in there, the distinctions?
Well, it's business, it's not personal. So, um, eh, eh, the thing is that your first goal is to create the business relationship. Over time, for me, a personal relationship develops. The
Yeah.
personal relationship is never front and center. It's always the business relationship, but they still have to like me. People buy from people they like,
Yeah.
it's got to make sense to them. And so that doesn't mean that you can't introduce some personal things in, send them a birthday card, or, I saw this and I thought of you. That's great. But the predominance does need to be on the business side. What's of value to them? What's in it for them? Why does it matter to them? So they can what? People buy the dream, they buy the goal, they buy the aspiration. So
Mhm.
you're always delivering on that throughout your outreach and your follow-up until they become a client. And even then you're continuing to deliver on that.
So how do you know and help people understand how to know when when in that process to kind of to close, right? Because that can become the never ending developing the relationship kind of process. So when's the right time to close? How do you know when to do that?
Well, there's certainly an art to closing. but there's a lot of ways that you can close and you can test the waters early on. And you can stack your yeses, but you always, if you don't ask, you do not get. All right. If you don't ask your husband to clean up the kitchen, he's not going to do it. All right. Or your partner, you know, and so you have to ask, and it's just how you ask. And your clients are going to, your prospects are going to be giving you buying signals. They're going to be asking you questions about, so it's a pretty straightforward. Okay, well, Jeanette, would you like to get started next week on Monday, or would the week after that on Monday be better for you? And you say, oh, well, I'd really like to start September 1. It's like, okay, great. So let's set our schedule up right now. Would you prefer to pay in one lump sum, or do you want a three payment plan?
Right. Yeah.
So I'm asking either or questions.
Yes.
That they don't say yes or no to, that they may say, oh, well, that doesn't quite work for me, I want to start here. But it's a soft, what I call, the industry calls soft closes. Yeah. I call them, I don't call them the soft closes, but that's okay.
Great. So part of the conversation in the big picture is around really learning some skills around sales, just like every other aspect. Like you said, there were parts of your business you didn't have skills in, and you had to develop those skills. You happen to be skilled in sales, which most entrepreneurs are not. So they need to learn about sales. What are some of the best, and we'll talk about you and your services too, but what are some of the best books or trainings or whatever that you've taken over the years that you would recommend?
Well, there's the classic Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Just a lot of common sense. It's been something that I've referred to a lot over my career. I love Patrick Lencioni, Getting Naked. It is a sales book, but he writes a story. It's a fable of how you build relationships. It's a great book. I like all of his books. I really like another classic old timer is Tom Hopkins. Now, I don't necessarily like all of Tom's, like, I do not believe in like set scripts that you never deviate from. I don't like that. But his exuberance and some of how he approaches things is very contagious. So I enjoy that. So those are 3 books. And I guess the last one I would recommend is not a sales book, but it's important for your business. And it's called Who Moved the Cheese? Who Moved the Cheese?
Who Moved My Cheese? Yep.
Yeah, Who Moved My Cheese? Right. But that is a book that is such a classic, because we live in a world that's constantly changing, and your cheese is going to get moved. So you've got to be able to move with your cheese.
Right. Okay. And so in terms of you and your business, what do you do? How do you work with clients?
Well, with my clients, we just get right into figuring out their client why, and where we need to focus their attention, and what can we stop doing. What are I don't want them to be wasting their time and energy, and we develop a strategy that they can stay focused on, and not get distracted by the shiny objects. Sometimes there are opportunities that are too good to pass up, but we want to get focused on a strategy and then execute on that strategy and start closing more sales, and closing those sales and getting numbers through the roof in 90 days.
And so to that end, one of the things that a lot of people think that if they're sitting behind their computer and they're DMing people and they're doing posts and they're doing all of that, that they're doing sales. That's not what I call sales. I call that marketing. And there's a big difference between the two. What do you call sales? And I don't want to say because I know the answer is it depends on the person's style and the industry and the kind of client and so forth. But for instance, right now, one of the things I'm doing is focusing on filling my network. Well, you know what? I am not going to fill my network by sending out emails or DMs or making posts. I'm just not. I'm going to fill my network by picking up the phone and calling people and saying, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? What's working? What's not? I have a great solution for you. This will help you with this and this. When they say they have this and this problem. that's what's going to fill the network. Doing a lot of calls, a lot of networking, a lot of reaching out. Tons of people have lots of resistance to that. What would you say to them about overcoming that resistance, or how do you help your people actually do what's effective in their sales versus all the things they think are going to help them?
Right. So I would agree. Social post is not sales. It is a way that you can, to me, it adds a lot of credibility and it adds social proof. So they look at your site or they look at your social. Oh yeah, they're active. They validated you. Boom, you're done. Um, and I know that there are people who would just ardently disagree with me, but
Yeah.
I also agree. Pick up the dang phone. Okay, pick up the phone. Picking up the phone and having a one-on-one conversation with someone, planning to get their voicemail, know what you're going to say, lead with value. Why does it matter to them?
Mm-hmm.
What's in it for them? And then at the end, it's this is who it this is my name. So I have a very set way. I call it the triumphant triangle or the dynamic duo. But it's you plan to get voicemail. If you get them on the phone, great. But you plan on a voicemail, you tell them what the value is, why it matters to them, and you're going to drop it into an email so that they'll have it at a click.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do that, you're building up, once again, what is it going to be like to work with you? That you're always showing up with them in mind, with value, with what matters to them.
Mm.
If you're not wasting your time, you're not just doing some, oh, hi, Jeanette, this is Lynn. I
Yeah.
was calling to follow up. I mean, please don't do that.
Yeah. All right. And part of that is really about incorporating your client's perspective, right, into
Yes.
the conversation, and what they want and they need. So what would you say are some of the simplest, fastest ways for people to get over there in their shoes, in those other people's shoes? Because we tend to want to talk and here's what I do, and here's what I do, and here's what I do, here's the modalities I use, and I liken it to, if I'm going for surgery, I don't want to know what kind of scalpel that surgeon uses. I want to know that I'm going to leave and not have any pain walking, and that I'm not going to set off the metal detector in the airport. Just tell me
Okay.
what I want to know and what's
Yeah.
important to me. How do you help them understand or find out what matters to those clients?
Well, I have a whole process that we go through to really dive into their client thinking and their client avatar. So there's not enough time to dive into all that, but there are a whole series of exercises of where we walk through that and we work on that. Uh, and it's so foundational to your sales efforts. And then it dictates what you do in your marketing. And it is it's how you create the repeatable, consistent, scalable process.
Okay. Yep, I get it. I get it. And there's a lot of different components to that as well, but it's important to really, one of the biggest things, the simplest ways to think of it is ask. If you want to know what they're thinking, ask. If you want to know what they need, ask. If you want to know what they want, ask. Stop assuming, stop projecting, stop, all of that kind of stuff. Just ask. Um, what would you say is the kind of the biggest mistake that most people make when it comes to sales, especially, new entrepreneurs?
Well, the first thing is not understanding their client avatar and understanding their client thinking. That's absolutely the first mistake. The second is not following up. So many people fail to follow up.
Yeah.
It's chronic. And
Yeah.
what you're doing is you're letting 80% of your sales go to the person who does follow up. Think
Yeah.
about it. It's huge. If you are the one following up, you're staying front of mind, and you're there when they're ready to buy. And that prospect becomes a client.
Exactly. Lynn, in my Facebook group, which I've been building for a long, long time, it's now called the Maturepreneur World, and it's for those who are too inspired to retire. It used to be called the Purpose and Profit Sisterhood for women who were, building their business. Um, I have had what I call What You Got Wednesday, or now it's called Wisdom and Wealth Wednesday, every week for people to promote themselves, because it makes no sense to me to join a business group that's to help you grow your business and then they say, but God forbid whatever you do, don't sell. We want you to be successful. We want you to grow your business, but whatever you do, don't offer what you do. It's like, huh? Like that's a complete head tilt to me. And I really find that, especially in a lot of women's groups. So I want people to sell on that particular day, so the whole thing doesn't become really spammy. But I beg, and I mean beg, people repeatedly every single week when they join, a couple times after they join, and when I talk to them, to promote themselves not once but multiple times, because people don't see the posts. They very seldom see them, and if they see them once, they may or may not act on it. If they see it 3 times, they may or may not get around to going to it until they kind of go, oh yeah, I did want to follow up on that. I can count on one hand, in over 6 years of that community, I'm probably on 3 fingers, the number of people who've promoted their products or services more than twice. Um, how do you get people to do that? Like, for the love of God, help me, Lynn. How do I get them to get that? How do I get them to get that if you want to actually sell your products and services, how about you let people know about them
Yeah.
repeatedly?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways. So when you lean into who your client avatar is, so just this morning, my email that went out was, I actually had screenshotted an email that was the lamest follow-up, and it literally, the subject line was just checking in. I mean,
Yeah.
hello. And so, and my subject line is, why lame follow-up is killing your sales. Right.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but in it, I showcased this. I said, what was wrong with it? I gave them pointers, and I said, what needed to happen.
Mhm.
And then I said, hey, if you need help, book a call.
Yeah.
So I had a call to action.
Yes.
Book a call. If you need help with this and you can't quite figure it out, book a call with me.
Yes.
you
And then
know
you put a
and
link.
so you're delivering value, you're showcasing
Yeah.
what, and you're giving education, right? And at the end, what do you want them to do next?
Yes. And I bet you put a link in there, right? Book a call
Oh
here.
yeah, yeah, there was definitely a link.
Honest to God, I cannot tell you how many times people put a relatively soft, vague, innocuous call to action with no, like, buy my book, no link to the book, or book a call, where, how, or, DM me. Oh, now I have to go and do all that and track you down and then go back and see if you responded and pay attention to that, which I never do. It's like, for the love of God, make it easy. As you can
Yes.
tell, I get a little frustrated when it comes to people who won't take advantage of opportunities to be more successful. It annoys the hell out of me, because there's enough places where we get told, no, you can't do it, no, you can't sell. And if people are saying, please do, then please do.
Yeah, and you can do it through education,
Yes.
sharing a valid tip. Always, why does this matter to them?
Yeah.
And what's in it for them? And when you're doing that, you're delivering value. You're not just shamelessly self-promoting. You're
Yes.
demonstrating your expertise. You're letting them see, like, oh, okay, this makes sense. I like this. I like what she said about this.
Yeah.
And so, yes, that is the best way. And then give a clear call to action with, that you're a click away, and make it easy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, I could, as you could tell, I could talk to you about this for hours and hours and hours, because I love talking about business, and I love talking about what makes people more successful, and I love talking to competent experts. How do people find out more about how you can help them and how they can connect with you?
Yeah. So you can go to our website, petite, and the digit two queen.com, petite2queen.com. And anything you want to know about, use our search bar and just say follow up, and everything that I've produced on follow up will be there.
Yeah.
So it's really great. I have a number of lead magnets right on our website. I'm talking to an intelligent audience.
Yeah.
And one is my sales strategy checklist. And this is going to tell you the missing gaps that you may have in your sales process
Mhm.
and your own sales blueprint. So it's really quick and easy. It's a 4-page document.
Mhm.
And on our website, you can click to schedule a call anytime that you'd like to have a free consultation.
Okay, awesome. I'm actually signing up right now to get your download because I want to go see what it says. And oops, nope, that's not right. Okay, clearly I shouldn't be doing two things at once. So, um, Thank you for that. And your gift for people is that checklist. So please go and get that. Petite two, number two, queen.com/checklist. Go in and download that. There's tons of information, by the way, on that page where you can, it's kind of an educational page in and of itself. We were talking about it's a very extensive download page.
Yeah, the landing page. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Lynn, there's so many people who are either getting going or keeping going in business these days, especially in the maturepreneur world. What keeps you going?
Well, hey, I love what I do. And I know that a no is just one more step to yes.
Okay, awesome. That's a good mic dropper there. A no is just one more step to yes. Um, how long do you think you're going to do your work? How old are you now, and how long do you think you're going to work for? Do you think? I'm just curious.
Well, I don't see an end in sight. My late father worked until he became so ill he couldn't work anymore. And so I really love what I do. And I I don't necessarily see an end
Yeah.
until they drag me, from the stage or something.
I
And I'll be like Minnie Pearl and they'll be dragging me from the stage with a hook.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think that that's much more of a trend these days. That's why I'm creating the Maturepreneur world is there's so many people who are not done and won't be done until they are, right? But that's
Yeah.
not what used to be the case. It used to be, you retire at 65 and or you were on the Freedom 55 plan, which very few people ever were. And then you died at 75 and that was that. But that's not the case anymore. And so, if you, ladies and gentlemen who are listening, are thinking about getting going with your own enterprise, pitter patter, let's get at her. We don't have a lot of infinite amount of time to get this done. Your gifts matter, your expertise, your wisdom, your experience matters. So, let's get that out there. Pretty much, I have yet to find something that's not monetizable when it's a hobby or a skill or an ability or whatever that someone in the world doesn't need. Maybe you can I'll put it out there as a challenge. See if you can trip me up and find something that I can't monetize and turn into a business. That would be fun. And once you do, then for the love of God, get good at sales, get good at marketing, get good at being an entrepreneur so that you can be effective in solving the problem that you're here to solve or bringing the benefit that you're here to bring, the gifts. So reach out to people like Lynn, like myself, that are going to help you with your marketing or your sales or your entrepreneurship so that you can make a difference, make the difference that you're here to make. So, Lynn, those people who are getting going or keeping going, what's one last piece of advice you'd like to leave them with?
Yeah, just embrace the joy. I
Mm.
mean, and the new journey and the new horizons that are out there. I mean, it is exciting. It's
Mm.
exciting. Keeps you young.
It is. I love that. And it does keep you young when you're looking at new things and what opportunities exist. So embrace the joy, embrace the journey. Great advice. I love that. And ladies and gentlemen, don't do it alone. Create a community, join a community, be part of a community that will celebrate that joy with you, that will go on that journey with you. If you want to, African proverb, if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I actually believe if you want to go fast and far, go together. So please check out the maturepreneur.world for a world-class community that is super affordable, that will support you in getting going or keeping going. Maturepreneur.world. And do go and get Lynn's supportive checklist at petitequeen.com/checklist so you too can experience the joy of that new opportunity. Thank you for being here, Lynn. Have
Thank
a
you.
great day, everybody. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.